Hi, my name is Bruce Boldrin. I'm founder of the Enterprise Engagement Alliance, and we're dedicated to helping organizations improve performance through a strategic and systematic approach to managing all stakeholders across the enterprise. And these series focus on how to make your programs and your efforts more effective by getting insights from people who are at the front lines of these issues. And today we're going to be talking about reimagining meetings and incentives in the post-COVID era. There had been a lot of talk about how we would be reimagining meetings after we've done so many Zoom meetings. And now we're going to talk to people at the front lines to find out what's really happening. And just before we get started, we always like to thank the many organizations that we do business with. Our job is to help them profit from all these big developments in business today, and we always like to thank them. And there are multiple companies involved. And finally, we give a lot of our resources away. So always, if you have any questions about science, research, whatever, the EEA is here to help you. So I'm now going to stop this share and introduce our speakers, which I was supposed to do. This is not a great day for me, but Rick Garlick, he is head of his own Rick Garlick and Associates consulting agency for research, and he actually does research for the Enterprise Engagement Alliance. We have Melissa Van Dyke. She's a senior vice president of, I believe that's strategic planning and marketing for a Creative Group, which is one of the leading incentive travel and meetings companies in North America, not just the US. We have Charlotte Frederick. She's also a vice president for EGR International. They're a leading and very, I think, 75-year-old meeting and incentive travel and a promotional company going, well back. Kate Cardoza also is with a vice president with HMI Performance Incentives, and they're also a meetings and incentive company going back but probably before Kate was born. And finally, Jack Busby. She's a founder of Lux Incentives, and they've been doing high-end incentive and meeting programs for leading companies for also over 30 years. And her company now has become very involved with integrating technology to help companies create a 365-day-a-year engagement experience. So thanks all of you for joining us today. Rick, I'm going to start with you simply because you're on the upper left. We talked an awful lot about during the COVID about how we should really rethink meetings and incentive travel. Now that we can have incredible discussions like this with top people, this is going to be available on our website for years. People can access it on demand. And so there was talk that we were going to change formats. What evidence have we seen that companies are changing along with the research we're seeing that suggests they should change?
Well, one of the things that some recent studies have shown is that the meetings industry as a whole is getting back, and I'll use this word in quotations, to normal. In other words, that people are going back to business travel, and they are traveling, not maybe quite as much as pre-COVID, but the meeting industry is looking pretty promising for the immediate future. Now, in terms of change, one of the things that we saw was prior to COVID, we were already starting to see a bit of a sea change. And by that, I mean is that people really want more networking time, something you and I have talked about, Bruce, maybe fewer plenary sessions and fewer panels, but more time to interact and more downtime for themselves during these meetings and events. Obviously, technology, artificial intelligence, all these things, I'm sure Jackie can speak to, are playing a big role in what those meetings look like. They're more interactive. It's less one-way talking heads. But, we are certainly starting to see more of an emphasis on sustainability and a lot of things, like I said, that were starting to happen before COVID that I think have been accelerated somewhat by the pandemic.
Well, Melissa, I'm going to give you a chance. My personal view from looking at the agenda is I don't see much change. I see a lot of the same things. I see keynote speakers bragging about being keynote speakers and people bragging about being on panels. I have not seen much change. But Melissa, and I'm going to ask all of you, you're at the front lines of this. Tell me I'm wrong.
Yeah, and I'm so interested to hear what Charlotte and Kate and Jackie are experiencing as well, because I would say, we don't really post-pandemic see a lot of clients saying, hey, how do we change a format necessarily to be more interactive? I think the predominant feeling overall is how do we post-pandemic create a shared emotional experience now that we're back together, now that we can gather in not just the hundreds, but in the thousands. And yes, that involves a lot of times auditorium time together, literally in physical spaces, which we didn't get for many, many years. So, or not for many years, but for at least for a couple, right?
Yeah.
So I think there's a more of a penchant to invest in that shared experience that we create together. We see a number of ways that that's happening. But I would say overall, from a format standpoint, the primary focus is on creating a shared emotional experience that, yes, oftentimes does still involve an auditorium with really great keynotes and with really well-prepared panels.
Jackie.
Did you say Jackie?
Yes, I did.
Okay, sorry. Okay, so, Melissa, it's so great to see you again, by the way. It's been a long time.
Yeah,
She's one of the best keynotes, by the way.
I'm sure of that.
it depends on the day.
One of the things, we do meetings, but we primarily focus on incentives and instead of strategies and how to move the middle and how to really connect with everyone instead of just, rewarding the top producers. But one of the things that was interesting, one of my large HVAC clients, we just had a program about a week ago in Mexico, and they opted not to have the business meeting, even though they got a ton of corporate sponsorship. And, probably for a lot of the reasons should have had it. But what we did is we put more money into the activities, and we had these, great catamaran rides where, private, and we just did these great experiences. And they were super bonding, and where, they kind of felt like rock stars. We were near yachts, and it was just fabulous. And so they focus more on the, like the team building, but in a very, unstructured way. So it was just organic. It just happened. And one of the things we did is we spent a lot of money on photography. And that was really great to capture all those memories and all those moments that, it's all, because at the end of the day, that's what you have, right?
So, Kate, you guys do both meetings and incentive travel. What are you seeing? And by the way, Melissa, what you said makes tremendous sense. There's no question that when you have a whole bunch of people in the room, you're going to get an emotional shared experience that you simply can't have by breaking everybody out. So I don't think anybody thinks that auditoriums are going away. But anyway, Kate, what do you think about the change of formats? Can we just go back to what we did for meetings? Can we just have great auditorium panels and whatnot? Or are people craving? The research seems to think that people want to spend less time in auditoriums. But what are you seeing?
So I think that it would be such a shame to go back to the way that things were, and I'd like to just start by saying something. This is a rhetorical question, but who on this panel is thriving and not just surviving? I know that I am surviving. I don't know many people who are thriving right now. It's hard emotionally, physically, mentally, emotionally. You've got kids and you've got aging parents, and life is hard. And so I do want to address that. And it brings me back. I've been thinking a lot lately to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I have a couple of things, little props I'm going to share. So I think that we need to, as in all industries, but as event planners, we're creating experiences for people, and we're connecting people, and we're taking care of people. And I think that we need to really be talking about and looking at those bottom levels of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the physiological, the safety, the love and belonging, because people are really struggling with those. And if we can't get people more comfortable in those places, then anything that we do, the catamaran, and Jackie, of course, right? Catamaran you have to have a catamaran if you're in Mexico or the Caribbean and you're doing an incentive, but we need to find a way to help people feel better so that they can engage more with the incentive or the meeting. I have a lot to say about this, but I'm going to keep it brief. I will
Oh,
say
you're
that
going to have more chance. Don't worry.
if
We'll get
we're
back to you.
doing a conference, and we have speakers, I don't want to hear, you mentioned it, Bruce, I don't want to hear the speakers talk about how great they are and how successful they are. I want to hear about their struggles. I want to hear about what got them there, and it wasn't easy, and they failed and they had some hard times. And I want to hear that first, and then I can connect with the content that they're then sharing. So that's one, I think, easy way to incorporate some speakers and some content there that will engage people more. Tell your speaker, I want to hear not just about how successful and wonderful things are for you, but tell me the path that got you there, because people can connect that more with that and be more engaged with that and the content they then have to share.
Wow, that's great. We're going to get back to you on that, Kate. Charlotte, your views on this?
Sure. So I kind of agree a little bit, obviously, with what everyone said. And to your point, Bruce, I do think, the meetings and incentive world, it's changing for sure. I think it still needs some work, and there still is the keynote and the panel discussion. The big buzzword that I'm hearing from a lot of clients is disruption. Want to disrupt their meetings, turn it upside down and make it look different. But that is obviously challenging because they say that, and not all clients are necessarily comfortable doing that, right? So they do go back to that normal format. But what I'm finding is, what we learned from the pandemic is just that passive learning didn't work. We need more engagement. So at each of these meetings, we need that engagement. And I think interactivity is where the mix is coming in. So you might still have the keynote, you might still have the panels, but that we're bringing in a lot more interaction into the events, right? The events and meetings are becoming experiences now. Everybody wants to tell a story throughout the entire event. And to Kate's point, I do think that, we look to technology. Some of these meetings are becoming overload and overstimulation, and people, since the pandemic, have social anxiety, and there's a lot of other layers that have to be. So I think clients are starting to bring wellness to the forefront of things as well, which is also bringing in that interaction. So I do think, there's obviously a long road ahead and things will remain the same, but there are some elements, keynote speakers are great, and there are elements that definitely do work within the meetings. But I think, change is inevitable. And I do think we have to start looking differently, especially, we have to be more creative. Budgets are decreasing and costs are increasing. So we have to look at everything creatively, and how we do things different.
Well, we're going to talk more about that and try to give some specific recommendations. Rick, you've been surveying the research, and you sent me over, some, various, blurbs, I should say, or snippets of research that do indicate that there seems to be a disconnect, because when we survey people, they say they want a lot more time interactively, together. They say they want a lot more leisure time. Could you give us what your kind of take on where attendees are at right now?
Yeah, and let me kind of bring it and tie everything that everyone's saying together as I'm hearing it. When Melissa said people want that shared emotional experience, and and the other panelists talked about, the notion of getting together and connecting more meaningfully. That's really, I think, what we're seeing in the research is that people don't want to go and sit passively and hear a speaker or hear panels and say, oh, that was nice, and leave. They really want more of the connection with other people. And maybe that is a product of the pandemic, when we had such little interaction with others, that people want to get out. They want to have that leisure time. They want those catamaran experiences, but they also just want time to be with one another and not have so much structure that they have to, constantly, okay, at 11 o'clock, I've got to be in this session, or 1 o'clock, I've got to be in this panel. They really want more flexibility to, kind of structure the meeting to their needs and have it be a more authentic experience. And that's what I heard the other panelists saying. And I think that really, Bruce, kind of explains what, I've shared with you, that people do really want more leisure time, less structure. But at the same time, the panelists and the speakers, they sort of serve as the centerpiece, to bring people together. And then, but not having it so structured that people don't have that opportunity for meaningful connection with one another. And that's really the value of the meeting experience from what I'm seeing.
And I'm going to come back to on incentive travel on the second part of this. So, but that's great. So, Melissa, now, obviously you need to have keynotes, you need to have panels to bring, in other words, centralize the conversation. There's no question, right? Okay, what are we going to talk about in those breaks if we don't anchor it? So my question to you, though, is that really has been 80-20, 80 plenaries, panels, and then 20% networking and whatnot. Do you see that ratio changing? Because I think to Charlotte's point, what are we going to do if we don't have panels and keynotes?
Yeah. I would agree. I think it is starting to change subtly. Of course, we all bring our pandemic and trying to plan meetings during the pandemic experiences with us. Kate, to your point, we're just slowly returning to that thriving portion, right? And I think as clients are really, Charlotte, you said it, trying to tell a story with their experiences, that is involving a little bit more time to give back to the individual, whether that's they create co-working spaces because we still have to answer all of the emails that are going on at work, right? While the experience is happening, or we're creating affinity groups that are a little bit beyond what they've been in the past. So it might be instead of just a first timers, it might be first time moms traveling groups, right? It's your first time away from your kids. So creating meaningful affinity groups to creating those interactive experiences in the auditorium and right outside of it. We've done like 2,300 person Easter egg hunts that end up in the auditorium with people looking for their golden egg in the auditorium, to like experiences as you walk in down the hallways that you can talk about and interact with brand activation. So it's about creating shared experiences leading up into that auditorium experience. And then, of course, I think as Charlotte and Kate were talking about, yes, that's going to give us something to anchor. But we're also seeing some really interesting investment in what happens in that space, like vertically creating things overhead and in the space to bring in the culture so that there's more to talk about and more to experience than just a straight keynote or a straight panel, right? The whole experience starts from the time they show up on site until the day ends. It's not just walk to the auditorium, hear your keynote, walk out. And I don't know what Charlotte and Kate, if you're experiencing the same thing.
Well, we're going to talk about that. I love what you said about storytelling, right? And creating a story and letting people live it authentically. We'll get back to that. Jackie, I know your emphasis is on incentive travel. A lot of the research is showing, in fact, it just came, I was just reading the latest IRF research, and then also research from Hilton Hotels, research from Expedia, all showing that people want experiences today. I mean, I created a series of books with photos about experiences in the 90s, and we were way ahead of our time. And now, wow, I mean, everywhere you talk is experiences. But are you seeing that actually happening? Are your clients talking more about, hey, we're going to be in Mexico, rather than just eating in the hotel? Let's go to a place where they make authentic tortillas and really have an amazing local meal. Or local real music. Are you seeing that, or is it really more talk? People still want to do the catamaran thing.
Well, they want to do the catamaran thing, but a little bit more exotically. And one of the things that I've been very successful with is creating community. So I do program engagement, like Zoom calls, getting the incentive clients together before the call for Q&A, and I have packing sessions, and I get them so they get to know each other. And then we create these technology groups where they are like, one of my groups traveled 3 months ago and we're still communicating with everyone. I mean, the result for my client has been the lift is incredible, and he already booked for next year. And so creating that sense of community, which I think that really Melissa and some of the other ladies were talking about, is so important, because people are looking for more meaningful travel and experiences they can't get on their own. And I think, like post-pandemic, the demand for travel has been so great, but then the experience of flying was so crappy, right? And people were scared, and they just want to know someone's going to take care of them and, do their group check-in and all that stuff. And so through the operations and the marketing communications, I think that's so important. And to getting to building that sense of community, then they build their own story.
So, Kate, getting back to you, and playing off on this, the story aspect, and then what you're talking about, what kind of recommendations do you make to clients? And Melissa, I'm going to get back to you because you had some great ideas, and you too, Jackie, of course, about how to let people absorb the story, right? In other words, okay, I heard that great keynote. And maybe there was a terrific panel discussion, and maybe to Melissa's point, the various theatrical elements are brought in to reinforce the story. But then how do we off-site? I mean, out of that room, out of the meeting rooms, are there ways that you're recommending clients to maybe reduce that 80-20 to maybe 60-40? But then what do we do with that 40 if we do that?
So I think a really important thing to talk about too, and you hear this talked about in all industries, is meeting people where they're at. And the problem with that is that everybody is at a different place in their lives and in what they're ready, willing, wanting to experience. So I think mostly in incentives, it's structuring an agenda that has a little bit of everything for everyone. I just got back from an amazing incentive travel program to Madrid and Barcelona, and there was a lot of at leisure time. There were a lot of optional activities and excursions in the cities, outside of the cities. There were optional tapas dinners and dine-around dinners. We did a farewell at this wonderful villa outside of Barcelona called Belreco, and I think the biggest hit of the entire trip was an amazing flamenco show that was part of this farewell dinner. People got emotional. It was such a wonderful way to end the trip. But so I think you have to offer a lot of different options, and a good way to find out what people want to do is we do a great job, I think, with post-program surveys, but I think we miss out on an opportunity to find out what people want and with their experience in a registration form. What are you looking forward to? What brings you joy? What brings you happiness? There's a lot that we can find out about people in that registration process to be able to design a trip that will make sure that we're meeting everyone where they're at.
And I'm going to ask you this too, Charlotte, so hold on. Are we seeing, the research indicates that people want more authentic experiences, more food, more music. Are you actually seeing that quickly, Kate? And then Charlotte, could you expand on that?
Absolutely. Not that they're necessarily asking for it, but it is our, I think, responsibility to give that to them. We don't want them to feel like they are at home at a restaurant. We want to give them local flavor, but in a way that is accessible to them. You can't give them crazy exotic things because they will be uncomfortable, but there is something that you have to add that reflects the destination. So definitely needing to add that local authentic flavor in menus and activities. I also think it's really important that there are non-alcoholic options available and that there isn't this push. If we're talking about wellness, right? Some people really struggle with sobriety. I had people on the Spain trip that said, hey, we don't drink. So you need to create an environment where they feel comfortable. People who drink are comfortable. People who don't drink are comfortable. So that's also, I think, an important element that we need to talk about that talks about menus and also wellness.
So Charlotte, what are you seeing? I know you guys do both meetings and incentive travel. Are you seeing clients gravitating toward really rethinking formats to giving people more free time? Are we seeing that people really are gravitating to more authenticity, or is it what we're saying in surveys isn't really what's happening?
No, I think it's definitely happening, and the shift is there. It's like everyone else said, personalized experiences are the direction that we're going. Everyone is different. People learn differently. As we get older, we learn different than the younger generation that might be there. So, and also your experience. You want, at an incentive trip, you want to give your customer an experience that get if they just travel on their own. You know, it's those, and it may not just be the big things. Sometimes it's just the little things that stand out. But again, it has to be personal to what their tastes are. So to Kate's point, you know, if you have an event at a winery, that may not work for everyone. So you have to be able to offset that and, you know, do things that accommodate the people who may not be in that. So getting to know the organization, getting to know the individuals that are traveling, I think is very important, and clients are definitely focusing on that. And, you know, just like everyone else said, is what makes a difference. You know, while the content at a meeting matters, the connections that you make, I think, are what really last longer. So building that community before, during, and after an event really make a big difference. So I think the shift is happening. I see it a lot on our side. I think clients are definitely much more in tune to that. That shift is important on our side to make sure that we bring that to the forefront.
So Melissa, thank you, Charlotte, getting to this issue of how to, you know, give people that free time. But I mean, we all know, I mean, and I just read a great book about the crypto cons, and one of the most effective techniques is event marketing, no doubt. And it's just what you just said. And I know you didn't mean it for nefarious means, of course, but frankly, you want to get a bunch of suckers all fired up, hold an event marketing and get some big name celebrities, and there's no question we've learned that it works. But most companies, of course, want to be, you know, ethical and productive in their meetings. So Melissa, how do you take the theater, which we know is very effective, but also leave more time? What recommendations do you make to allow people, if we're going to move from, say, 80-20 to 60-40, what types of, and you touched on it a little bit, of formats do you think are good? Like any other ideas in terms of exercises? How about, you know, collaboration events? Or how about, instead of having the speaker up on a stage, having the speaker sitting with people, having that expert, you know, how can we make these things more human?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I would say, first of all, from the giving people more of what they want, or personally connecting to the spirit experience that they want to curate. We've done things like choose your own ending, chill, skill, or thrill, right? And the experience that you have through that incentive travel program is either very relaxed, it's either all about learning, or it's all about high energy, jumping off cliffs and things like that. Chill, skill, or thrill. You choose your own ending through the entire event. Beyond that, I would say it's about intentionality. So how do you create very intentional micro experiences within the broader event for people to engage with? We've done everything, you know, like Game of Thrones chairs made of French fries, ball and sauce pit. I mean, just how do you bring fun and creativity intentionally centered on your brand, the story that you're trying to tell, but give experiences, little micro experiences throughout the time that people share together to partake in. So again, everything from, you know, ball pits and really fun interactive games that people can play, or Easter egg hunts, or what are the things that we do around the events to help pull the brand and the experience that we're trying to create, that feeling we're trying to create through, but create shared places to do that within the format.
So would you say that, in fact, I'll ask all of you the question, are we moving from, say, an 80-20, you know, plenary panel networking 20%? Are we seeing a shift toward more of a 60-40? And I'll just ask you each that question quickly, starting with you. Is there a shift to more, is it still kind of rigidly 80-20? Are we seeing a shift to more interactivity? Melissa, yes or no?
Yes, I would say definitely a shift to more interactivity, whether that happens inside the ballroom or outside. Definitely a shift to more interactivity.
Charlotte.
Yes, I agree. It's definitely happening.
Jackie.
I agree. And, you know, people really want to build shared relationships and experiences. And I see the corporates, my corporates, wanting them to do that as part of giving back.
Kate. Are you seeing
Definitely.
that shift?
Yes, yeah, to more interactivity. But at the same time, you can't expand necessarily the length of time that you're keeping people away from their normal lives. So you still have to find a way to get that content concentrated, but in a way that gets people more engaged with it.
So now we're going to shift gears a little bit, Rick, and go to this issue of sustainability in meetings and incentive travel business. And I think, everybody's been talking about sustainability from the standpoint of the environment. But I think, and I do want you to comment on that, and all of you, as to whether people are really doing it or whether they're just talking about it. But also, I want to bring up the issue of people sustainability, human trafficking. I think in many countries, for instance, in Cambodia right now, it's just been exposed that there is some horrendous, human trafficking going on there. It's a beautiful country. Should we punish a country because there's human trafficking? That's another issue. But Rick, how much is sustainability coming up in the research? And then I'm going to ask the four of you at the front lines of this. Is it coming up with your clients? And if so, what considerations are they asking about? But first,
Sure.
Rick, the research.
Sure, and I can tell you that the research shows that meeting planners as a whole, very large percentage of them have sustainability goals, but also the research shows that very few of them are meeting those sustainability goals. So it's stated importance, but not necessarily in execution. I'm right now engaged in a study with World Wildlife Fund looking at food waste prevention in meetings and events. And what we're finding is that there's a generational shift. There's a bi-coastal difference where some people are very concerned about these issues, others are not. Some have opined that it's really more of a generational change. Some say that you see it on the East Coast and the West Coast, and that others are not really interested. They give lip service to sustainability, but don't really follow through. I can tell you more certainly when our study is done, but my general read at this point in the preliminary stages is that people give a lot of lip service to sustainability. They set goals, but change is hard. That there are a lot of clients, there's a lot of executives who they want the big buffets and aren't really interested in these things as much. As far as human trafficking is concerned and some of those people issues, yes, I think there's a growing awareness. Again, is it as much as we'd like to see at this point? Is it as much of a priority to focus on these things as could be the case down the line? Not at this point. But we see this as a growing interest, and I think it's encouraging to all of us who are concerned about these issues.
So, Charlotte, being in the front lines of it, is it more talk than action in general? And again, I'm not being judgmental about it. I mean, the world is such as it is. I mean, what's the reality?
Yeah, sure. I think sustainability is definitely top of mind. All clients are asking for ideas for sustainability and how they incorporate it into their meetings. But as Rick mentioned, change is hard. And so I think, in the meetings industry, sustainability it's huge. There's a lot of waste that goes on. So small changes will make somewhat of a big difference, but it's going to take time. There's so much, so much waste. And so I see clients making small efforts towards it and making things happen. And that shift is definitely happening slowly. And it's nice to see, the hotels are starting to embrace it too. So we have clients that are looking for sustainable hotels. One of the things I think just is that the branding that goes on at hotels, and you see all of that paper that goes up on the boards and the buildings all over, and then it comes down and the next conference goes in and it comes down. And so we're starting to see, hotels are going to digital and doing all of that branding digitally, which is really nice. So I think it's happening. It's not an overnight change. It's going to take a lot of time for sure.
And are you seeing, obviously the Qatar Games, the World Soccer, where there was a lot of concern about workers being abused? Do clients ever ask, and I'll ask all of you the same questions related to, did clients ever ask, do you make sure that this hotel is not, is paying people properly? Are there any questions about that or generally not?
We definitely do get that from some clients. It depends on the destination and where we're going, but for sure, that does come up, and the research has to go into that and making sure that the client is comfortable with where we're going. So I do think they're picking destinations and locations based on a lot of factors when it comes to sustainability and safety.
So Jackie, what's your view on this? Is it more talk than action, or are clients saying, look, let's, how can we lessen our impact here? Or how can, and Kate, we'll get to you a little bit on, or how can we give back to the community?
Well, one of the things that my team has done, and it really happened during COVID, and it's been great for us. We did these travel experience booklets, 5x7, and they were beautiful. And, that was like it was their itinerary in their Bible, and, and we couldn't keep up with all the changes during COVID. So we went totally digital. And I think that has been a blessing. And like everyone says, change is hard, and COVID forced us to do it. And, we've made internally changes more digitally, and I'm really happy about it. But I don't know that we would have gone so soon had, COVID not hit. And I do think that clients are concerned about, they want to do the right thing. They're concerned about sustainability and the ethics of the people that they're doing business with. We were just recently on a Greek Isle cruise, and very near, we were in Turkey, and there was a lot of concern with everything going on in Gaza. So you don't know what's going to, as a incentive planner, you don't know what's going to hit you next. I mean, just as I'm trying to finalize all the details of the trip and, deal with all the changes, it's calling me, I'm 50% not going because I'm worried. And, it's hard to get your SOP in place and also deal with every human emotion like Kate was talking about, because you can't not validate their concern, even though it may not be your same exact concern. You've got to reach them where they want to be reached. So I agree with Kate on that for sure. And sometimes it's really hard.
Well, Kate, your company has made a real commitment, I think you personally, to giving back to the community. So what's your take on the concerns of environmental sustainability, people sustainability, and the desire of clients to give back to the communities where they're, entertaining their best?
So HMI has really made a commitment to more corporate social responsibility, which is part of sustainability. And so every program that HMI does, there is at least a donation made to a nonprofit in the host destination, if not an interactive activity for the attendees, either on property or off property. So there's something to be said for clients that come to HMI and say, sustainability is important to me, what can we do? But for HMI, that doesn't matter because HMI has taken a stance that we are going to do corporate social responsibility, whether or not the clients are partnering with us on it. We're not shoving it down their throats, but if they're not interested, we'll make a donation and they don't need to be involved in it. Of course, that's not what we're seeing, right? Most of our clients say, this is great and we really want to be a part of this. So you don't need to have your clients ask for in order to do it, I guess is my first thing. As far as environmental sustainability, I think that there are some brands, the Four Seasons and One Hotels, are doing an amazing job at prioritizing environmental sustainability. And those are luxury brands. So it's sustainable luxury. And I think that we do have clients that are willing to reallocate their budgets to be able to afford sustainable luxury because that is their focus. And I think it's a consideration that all companies should be making because it doesn't necessarily have to make a trip cost more if you're reallocating some of those budget dollars. I will say that one quick and easy trick for trying to reduce food waste, because it is, we all know on this panel that it's sickening how much food is wasted. There needs to be more transparent communication between event planners and hotels. There is an over prep percentage that hotels do when you give them the guarantee. If they will share that over prep percentage with you, you can adjust your guarantee accordingly, which will reduce food waste. At the Four Seasons in Madrid, I had the chance to see how they are measuring food waste because you don't know what your problem is until you can measure it. It was really enlightening. I think they're doing it at most Four Seasons to measure it so that they can then reduce it. So that's a really big and easy thing that we can all do in the event event industries talk about guarantees. And then the mobile
Well,
app.
could you explain that a little bit more? I think you're making a very important point for the non-technical people, just to peel that back a little bit more. How
So,
exactly does that work?
yes. So for every meal, if you're doing this, it's either at a hotel or some kind of venue or function space, you need to give a guarantee of how many attendees that you think you're going to get. A guaranteed percentage will be different depending if it's breakfast or dinner and depending on if it's an incentive or a meeting, but it's usually not 100%, right? We know not 100% of the people are going to eat. The hotels will over prep beyond that guarantee because they don't want to run out of food, and we don't want them to run out of food either, honestly. But if they share that, it's usually about 3%. So if it's 3%, then you can lower your guarantee by 3%, and hopefully that will make it so that there's less waste and less cost, obviously. But there's this tricky dynamic where the hotel wants you to guarantee more so that they make more money, and you're trying to guarantee less because you want to save money. So it's a fraught dynamic. But if there was more openness and transparency and communication about it, food waste would be reduced.
And that's probably one of the number one areas. And sadly, it
Yes.
occurs in places where there are a lot of starving people or underfed people. Melissa, how much interest are you seeing from your clients on this? Are they, is there a lot of talk and less action, or people are saying, no, we're concerned about the environment and people, and please make sure that we're not hurting the environment or people?
Yeah, I think I would agree with everyone on the call that it's always a part of the conversation. The level that it's a part of the conversation is really dependent on the client. Everything from small changes to F&B or even to the give back programs that they've always been doing, all the way to only using LEED certified buildings. And thank you to all the hoteliers, to your point, Kate, who are supporting and creating sustainable luxury, right? We actually have that option now, which we didn't always have, right, Jackie? So it's great to see hoteliers really supporting that so that we can help our clients lean into it. But yes, it is always a part of the conversation. And I think especially where our clients have sustainability goals that they have promised to the market, certainly meetings and incentives are a huge contributor to that. And it's our job to help them meet that. So if they've made large sustainability goals, that means, yes, we are helping, understand those CO2 emissions and manage them, helping manage the food waste from the programs, making sure we're in LEED certified buildings. Now that would be, I would say, the top end, but it's always a part of the conversation, which I would say is the great news post-pandemic.
Okay, well, switching gears, ROI. There's been a lot of talk I think the Incentive Research Foundation, Site Foundation, other organizations have really done, the Incentive Marketing Association, have really done a good job of providing a lot of return on measurement tools. There's the ROI Institute, Jack and Patty Phillips. But my question is, Rick, I get the feeling that a lot of money is being spent with not a lot of analysis, that companies either like the programs or they don't. And then when the new CEO comes in, she says, what are we spending $3 million sending everybody to Barbados for? And the meeting planner, So Rick, and then I'm going to ask all of you, is there a shift to a more scrutiny? Remember, ROI isn't always money either, right? Return on investment can be on engagement, on the understanding of our company values, or et cetera. So I don't want to talk about money, but how diligent are companies about really, okay, we're spending this, what are we getting in return? Rick, what are you seeing? And then I'm going to ask each of you the same question.
Well, the industry learned a lot from 2008, because back in 2008, they got really kind of caught unaware with all the things that were going on, and people said, where's the ROI in these programs? And when they were unable to produce it, so many of those programs got cut. And some of the research I did at the time showed that if you cut these programs, the incentive programs, that within a year, you've lost all the benefits from them. So we've gotten better at it. And ROI is much better measured today than it was in 2008. The big problem is people don't know how to do it. because, you know, there's hard dollars and there's soft dollars, right? So if it's a sales incentive program, you can look at, you know, are my salespeople more productive than they were without this program? But there's a lot of things like, you know, the whole notion of, do I feel more connected to my company and my colleagues? Is it going to make me less likely to switch jobs and go somewhere else if there's an incentive program offered? And there's a lot of things that people would say are important, but they just don't know how to measure them. Now, there are people out there, like I'm one of them, and people you've mentioned are also in this business of helping you figure that sort of thing out. But then people don't really want to invest in that. And I think there's enough general goodwill and trust that, well, we've always had this program, it's really important, so let's keep it. And yet, you know, the danger comes, of course, if there's an economic downturn and you've got to come back and justify, you know, the expenditure. And that's where, I think people are being more proactive than they've been in the past, you know, establishing that up front so that they're less likely to be caught unaware if all of a sudden there's a budget crunch, or as you said, a new CEO comes in and starts questioning. But there's a lot of work to be done. People just need to figure out how to do it or hire people who do.
Melissa, to his point, I have never seen companies willing to invest. I'm sorry, it's never. I have rarely seen companies that are willing to invest to pay extra to pay your company to come up with a serious ROI metric. Again, whatever that, again, it can be an ROI on purpose, goals, and objectives, not necessarily financial. And you, in your many years, have promoted ROI. But Melissa, how many clients really come to you and value ROI measurement on it?
I would say every client values measuring how much of an impact that on objectives their experience made. And ROI is really in the eye of the beholder, I think. If it's a sales executive who owns the event and it's a sales-driven event, then yes, ROI and having a self-liquidating program, which oftentimes incentive travel based on lift are, yeah, that's a big part of, and we're actually working with a lot of clients to understand if they're getting to the right audiences, if they're getting the right lift, recalibrating those metrics to make sure you get the ROI from the intended ROI from the sales incentive program. I would say we're also seeing a shift for marketers understanding, to your point earlier, Bruce, the value of face-to-face meetings. And from a marketing perspective, the beauty of face-to-face meetings is they not only have all of that live, we know the value of live. You're talking about them, Rick, right? The soft engagement that we get and all of that brand storytelling. Now the digital assets that are created from those events also have marketing value, which oftentimes exceeds the marketing and ROI that you can get from like Google ads. So there is a digital element now that exists for events that helps in.
Oh, we just lost you, Melissa. Melissa, we lost you. She doesn't know that she has been lost. Can you guys hear her?
No.
No, we can see her.
Melissa, we lost you.
Post survey so that we can tell a story.
By the way, you disappeared. We lost you for about 30 seconds. So if you could just repeat the last 30 seconds.
I was just saying, what I love on the ROI, so digital, so marketing,
yeah.
These events have value, oftentimes more than a Google ad. That's what the pandemic did for us, right? So we can now have a much better ability to get information through registration. People are willing to give it. We can use that information post. We can also use surveys to understand the impact that events are making. So events have not only that live to live impact, but also a digital impact that is much more measurable and has a lot more value, we're finding, than it has in the past.
Well, that's very interesting. Charlotte, what are you seeing? Are clients asking more about, the return on their investment, or is it generally as it was in the past, they either believe and they don't, or they don't, and maybe they'll survey people to make sure they were happy, etc. What do you see?
I think it's a little bit of a mix. Organizations are definitely more conscious and aware of the impact that their events are having, and how their, overall objectives are being met and how they're spending their money. And I think we can do good job of measuring their objectives, post-program surveys, pre-program surveys. It's just a matter of what happens with that information after the event. And I think that's kind of what we're seeing is, you know, clients want that and it is top of mind. It's just what they do with that information after the event happens. That may take some time to, you know, for them to get up to speed of where they need to be.
Jackie, your view. Your company made a commitment to ROI, gosh, back in the early 2000s. I have to credit you for, again, being ahead of your time on that. What are you seeing in terms of clients being receptive to this? Because I know back in the early 2000s, most just, no, you know, we believe in it. Do you see a different climate now in the 2020s?
I do, for sure. And to Kate's point, you have to meet the client where they're at. So I'll still take the trip without the ROI if they don't want to do it, because I can still measure engagement and create community. I can add a lot of value, and also lift sales, even if they're not allowing me to get their numbers and measure. Just to be candid with you, I also have a whole technology suite that involves engagement, and incentives and sales. And, you know, I can do gift cards, I can do merchandise, I can do individual awards experience, and then migrate over the top performer trips. And for me, and I'm sure everyone on the panel feels the same way, it's where you're going to dramatically increase your profitability is moving your middle. And without that, not everyone feels engaged. Just the top performers go on these great trips, and eventually people get, you know, disgruntled and feel unappreciated. And especially, I was just talking to an investment banker over Thanksgiving, and I was talking about how great it is to reward and recognize people in real time, because I got to wait till February to be recognized. And so I think that technology, you can really bring it all together. And there's definitely a place for the trips, which are great. But where the real opportunity for growth is to move, you know, have the A or the B players become A players, and the C players become B plus players. And that's when you know, move the bell curve 30% to the right. And the gamification too. I call that taking people on a journey they don't even know they're going on, one bite-sized piece at a time. And so I do find that, because I'm really a strategic consultant and I've got a lot of tools in my toolkit. And that's why Rick and I get along so great, by the way. And I think that there's a lot of people understand that when they can use a platform to administer their sales and engagement programs, that there's a lot more opportunity for growth. I think it's a trend that's happening.
Kate, what do you see?
So to Melissa's point, for incentives, it's relatively easy to measure ROI if you have structured the incentive in a way that only people who are overachieving goals or achieving goals are going on the trip. So if your trip is 100% attended, then you've met the goals that you've put in place for this trip to begin with. How do you measure, though, this Spain trip? 5 out of the 50 couples said it was a trip of a lifetime. How do you measure that, right? So there, of course, will always be the quantitative, and there will always be the qualitative, and the qualitative is the trickier one to evaluate, but in some cases, it might be the more important evaluation. Of course, with conferences and forums and meetings, it is very different in how you measure. You know, this is my second and last prop. So I just read this. It's called The Art of Gathering. And it's just a whole new take on how to plan any kind of get together, really, personal, professional. So I think that maybe there is an opportunity, if you have not been doing ROI, if you have not been evaluating ROI, maybe read this book, change some things, take your old surveys, compare them to your new surveys, and maybe that can be a way of measuring some kind of an ROI in the delta between the two. So I do believe very strongly in data. It's how we measure everything in life. So I definitely think that there needs to be more of a focus on it.
Well, we're wrapping up, and so I'm going to give each of you a chance to give your quick advice. You've got upgraded to first class. You're sitting next to a CEO. She says to you, Melissa, I'm planning a big event. What would what do you think I should really be considering? What are the top considerations I have? All of my people can do Zoom things. We do panels and we do great speakers. What's your advice on how I might rethink my event post-COVID? Should I go back to what I was, or what should I reconsider now? Each of you, it's a difficult question, but do your best.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I did clip off there at the end, but I think we're talking about if I had to talk with an executive about the value of event and what I would suggest. I think the most important thing right now post-pandemic is this. You know, we're investing in experiences for a very good reason, right? You're investing these dollars to move the people who move your business. Think about what you want them to think, feel, and do differently after the experience than when it started. And let that be what guides you and how you determine how this experience gets crafted and unfolded. We're investing in these for good reason. What do you want them to think, your audiences to think, feel, and do differently after, and then create that experience for them? Because I think one of the things we were talking about, that can oftentimes be part of our post measurement. And then create the shared experience that makes it happen.
That's terrific. Charlotte.
I agree with what Melissa said. I think we have to think about how we want the people to feel after the event. And going back to what we said before, the personal experiences are what matter. I think, you know, it's important to understand how to foster and strengthen those relationships, the connections of those in-person meetings. There's nothing like them. And I think those make a huge difference. Strengthening the organization and creating brand loyal lists.
Jackie.
I agree with Melissa and Charlotte. It's, you know, it's basically listening to your client and helping them to achieve their own goals, because this is all about team building, camaraderie, and making people feel important, so that they do a better job.
Kate.
These have been great suggestions. I'm definitely going to keep them with me. I think the purpose, you know, and that the art of gathering, the whole idea and the purpose behind your event. What are you trying to achieve, and work backwards from that. Based on that, where are you going, and how many people are you bringing, and what's your budget, of course. So really just looking at those back to basics questions, and pushing them to do things a little bit differently, maybe a lot differently based on what they've done before, because it's a different world and there are different opportunities to create a space of engagement and connection for attendees, and that this corporate social responsibility piece, providing an opportunity for attendees to engage with nonprofit organizations and people in need in the destinations, has taken HMI's events to a whole other level, besides it being the right thing to do. So that can change your whole event experience, and it's an easy and good thing to include as well.
Well, we've gotten some great advice here, Rick. So I'm sorry, you're the last. What do you have? Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, let me just put a little bit of a different spin on what I think other people have said. So neuroscience has taught us that it's really what people feel that motivates behavior, not what people think. And so where meetings in the past might have focused really heavily on content and learning, now I think we've learned that people really need to have that emotional experience and an emotional connection. So to what everybody else has said, maybe I can just put a bit of a bow on it and say, create experiences that will really impact people emotionally, whether it's through, you know, authenticity and the experiences, connection, all these sorts of things that we talked about. How are people going to be impacted emotionally? So when they walk away, maybe they feel this was the trip of a lifetime, or this meeting allowed me to make some really meaningful relationships that, you know, have now influenced me beyond just simply head knowledge, but now heart knowledge as well. So that might be a good way to summarize up what I think everybody else was saying.
I think you did it, actually. Thank you very much. So Charlotte Frederick, Jackie Busby, Kate Cardozo, Melissa Van Dyke, and of course, Dr. Rick Garlick. Thank you all for giving us some really meaty, good stuff. folks will be summarizing this show in an article, and we'll start promoting it and linked, pardon me, on our newsletters and everything. So again, I want to thank all of our speakers today.
Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good day, everyone.
Bye.